Hey everyone, this is Nick, and I initially wanted to make a dedicated video about KDE Linux and all the interesting subsystems that they use as their base, but they since changed the webpage for this distro, asking people not to make YouTube videos about it. So while I'm still going to talk a little bit about KDE Linux, I'm mostly going to talk about official desktop distributions, why I think it's really great that desktops are working on their own distros, why they're actually doing it, and the potential implications. We'll also talk a little bit about KDE Linux, but with a huge warning that you probably shouldn't go bother the developers yet, it's pre-alpha. So what prompted this video? Well, obviously this is KDE Linux. They announced their own official distribution made by members of the KDE team, showcasing the KDE desktop as they want users to have their first contact with it. We'll see why it is super important, but this also encompasses a bunch of stuff. The currently talked about GNOME OS, for example, being slowly moved into being a daily drivable system, but you also have Linux Mint as the official desktop distro for Cinnamon. You have Elementary OS for Pantheon and its desktop. You also have stuff like Solus, which for a time was the showcase for the Budgie desktop, and plenty of other potential ones for their own desktop environments. Some desktops don't have their official distro, and that's, for example, XFCE or maybe Enlightenment. Even like GNOME and KDE right now don't really have their own official distro that users can download and use as a daily driver. But most desktops are moving towards building that reference implementation, and we're gonna see why and why it's important. Because, yeah, the main question is, why would you bother building an entire system when it's already a big ask to build an entire desktop environment? Some people would argue that no desktop environment is currently complete enough, stable enough, or functional enough. And I can understand the point. If you have limited resources, do you want to dedicate them to building an entire distro base? And this is why we saw things like KDE Neon, for example, where basically they didn't build the base. They took the Ubuntu LTS base, which is relatively unmoving and pretty stable, and they just built packages on top of that base to have the latest KDE system. Problem is, when you build the brand new desktop that you just finished putting together on an old base, like an LTS that might already be like 2 years or 2.5 years old by the time you switch to the new one, the libraries you're using to build your packages, they might be a bit too old. And this is why KDE Neon ended up being sort of unstable and not really reliable for anything other than testing the latest KDE desktop and debugging and reporting bugs, but not really usable as a daily driver in a lot of cases because it tended to crash a lot and to have like really big bad bugs, especially during upgrades. So they wanted to build something else, their own distro base, which, yes, is a lot of work, but is also really necessary here. Now, in the case of KDE Linux, that base is really peculiar. It is an Arch base, but it is Arch based in the same way that SteamOS is Arch based, meaning they took some components of Arch, but they are not building an Arch-based distro. There's no AUR, there's no Pacman, it's a read-only file system, it's UEFI only, you need secure boot disabled, you can't use external kernel modules, apart from the open source NVIDIA modules, but the proprietary ones don't work. You can't add on new kernel modules as well that weren't built with the entire system in mind. You have to reboot for updates because you reboot onto a new system image. You have rollbacks using the BetterFS file system, which is the only one that is supported. It doesn't work on M1 Max. It is basically a very opinionated concept right now. Some of those things might change in the future maybe, but right now it is really meant to be a rock solid base. And I understand why, because you don't want users breaking it. You already have to debug and fix all the problems with the KDE desktop and apps. You don't want to have a ton of support and maintenance to do on the distro base itself. You want your users to have a super solid experience. This means that some users will never use that thing because they don't want an immutable system. They want a distro like on the traditional model where you can just edit any config file by hand, potentially destroy your system, but also have the freedom to destroy that system, which you can't really do in an immutable system, because while you can change almost everything, you need to use specific tools that will generally prevent you from destroying your entire system. So that's for KDE Linux's whole shtick, but why is it important? Because we already have tons of distros that ship KDE in its vanilla form. We already have tons of distros that ship GNOME in its vanilla form. If you look at Fedora, for example, or even just Arch, it just gives you the desktop in its vanilla form. No tweaks, no configurations, no nothing. You're free to change everything, but the base desktop is exactly how you would imagine it and exactly how the developers want you to experience it. So why would you spend all that time building a separate distro? Well, there are multiple reasons why it is actually really good. First, you're building the reference implementation that doesn't depend on another project. So in the case of KDE Linux, yes, you could have like pure KDE on Arch, but you didn't build those packages and you don't control the underlying base at all. On KDE Neon, you do build the packages, but you don't control the distro base either. You're beholden to any change Ubuntu LTS makes and to the older versions of libraries in there that might break your nice little packages. So you want to be able to build your entire desktop with the packages that you made, fixing the issues that you noticed based on libraries that you control and versions of libraries that you control. It gives you a reference implementation. It's also super helpful to debug, because when someone reports tons of bugs, for example, I don't know, on Arch or on Ubuntu, or well, Kubuntu in that case, well, you do have a reference point. You can say, oh, you know what? All these bug reports on Kubuntu, yes, they do exist, but we don't see that bug on KDE Linux. Meaning it's probably a bug either in the versions of the libraries that are in Kubuntu or in how the packages were built by Kubuntu. Meaning we can fix it, we can look at it and see how we can improve that flow, but also we can say, no, it's not KDE being buggy, it's Kubuntu developers making an error when building and or testing those packages. And it also allows you to recenter the conversation. Instead of adding up all the bugs of KDE on all the distros that ship it, whether that bug is from KDE or from the distro itself, and so you're getting that negative image of KDE is buggy and crashy because I have this bug on this distro, this bug on this one. Well, you can say those bugs don't exist on the reference implementation. These are distro bugs or distro-related bugs. Our distro doesn't have those. Or on the contrary, our distro also has those. It is a KDE Plasma bug, and we do need to fix it fast because it's affecting everyone using KDE. This also gives your developers a unified development environment. When they're building new software for KDE or iterating on existing software, they can all work on the same base. They can all develop on KDE Linux, and that's it. Like, you build everything on that system, you test everything on that system, and so everyone has a coherent and cohesive development environment, which I would assume is probably already the case. I would assume most KDE Plasma developers rely maybe on KDE Neon testing or Unstable, but now you also do control the base, and so when your developers report something really wrong with a library or a thing that is making compiling your software a bit worse, you can change it yourself. You don't have to make a weird addition onto a distro that is also used by other people. You can just change your own base and test it properly, and I think it's just a more stable and better way of handling things. Now, the second reason why you'd want to do this whole distro shtick is to work with hardware partners, because obviously it is a win-win situation. You have people like Slimbook, Tuxedo, System76, and a bunch of others, notably in Europe, building computers that ship with Linux. Some of them build their own distros, but they also offer other choices. And so if you can be one of those choices, the hardware partner has a system to ship to their users, another option, that's good, and you, as the distro maker, you get a small part of the revenue of those sales. If your distro is good, people keep buying it, keep buying that hardware with the distro, and you keep getting money. If the distro is bad, then people don't buy the hardware with your distro pre-installed, and you're not getting the money. We've seen this with KDE Neon, but KDE Neon is not something you really can argue for with a hardware partner, because they're gonna get bug reports. They're gonna get users saying, oh, this no longer works. After the latest update, my computer stopped working. What should I do? You sold me a computer with something that is half broken. I would argue most people buying those computers with KDE Neon pre-installed are existing Linux users and they will know how to change things, but maybe some people started out with those devices and they got a bad experience because Neon is not that stable. So if you can replace that with a more stable experience, it's always better. And it also avoids other distributions capturing the entire value of that relationship with hardware manufacturers. Because right now, mostly it's Ubuntu, it's the likes of Fedora or Kubuntu or stuff like that that are grabbing that value. Yes, they are building an interesting product, they are building the entire distro, but they're also building it on top of your own efforts, your own desktop, whether it's GNOME or KDE. And so what you're getting in the end as the desktop is some amount of donations from users, some contributions from distributions, but you're not getting this part of the, let's say, the financial side of open source, which you might think is a dirty word in open source, but it's not. You do need money to keep paying developers. And this is a good avenue to get money. You build an entire system and you sell that to hardware manufacturers, which will give you a little commission on every sale. Super important to make a project viable financially in the long run and also support it in the long run without relying on pure user donations. A third important point is that these official desktop distros allow desktop environments to never pick a favorite. If they want to recommend something to their users like, oh, how can I use KDE? You either have to have a super long list of all the distros that ship KDE. If you forget one, they're going to be angry. So they're going to say, oh, you can use it on Arch, on OpenSUSE, on Kubuntu, on Fedora, on whatever else. It's going to be a long list. You have to place one first, then one at the bottom. You have to order them in a specific way. Maybe it's alphabetical, but then it's Arch on top all the time. It's not great. And if some users say, yeah, okay, well, you have 20,000 distros using KDE. Which one should I use? You have to recommend something. You can't say, oh, we can't really pick, or we can't say. That's not helpful. You have to tell people, well, our best implementation is this. You can't do KDE Neon because it's not your best implementation. But if you do Fedora, then maybe the Kubuntu developers aren't happy. If you do Arch, then maybe the Fedora developers are like, hey, come on. Like, we work together super closely. We should do something. If you have your own system, you can just say, hey, you want to try out KDE and see how it works? We recommend KDE Linux. It's the system we built ourselves. It is the reference implementation. You have all the defaults that we recommend, and it just works. Like, it might not be the final system you land on and the one you will use in the long run, but to give a shot to our software as we developed it, as we intend you to use it, this is how we recommend you do it. And I think this is a super important point as well, because it just gives you control over the entire thing, not just the desktop, and then crossing your fingers that somebody please will ship your software as you intended it and not with tons of customizations. So this is why those desktop distros are very important to support those projects. Some distros already do it, Elementary OS, Linux Mint, at some point Solus was also the budgie figurehead, but KDE and GNOME are the major desktop environments, and so they never really needed to build their own distro to showcase their own desktops because those desktops were already used by literally everyone else. Like, it's super rare to find a distro that doesn't offer either a GNOME or a KDE option. They mostly all have it, unless their point is to not have them. So they never had any problems distributing their software to the users. The problem is we're slowly realizing that letting someone else distribute your software in another way than what you wanted to do is not great every time. Like, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. It's like allowing people to build third-party packages of your software. Sometimes it's cool. It lets your software be run on a distro that you had no intention of supporting. Nice. And sometimes the third-party package is utterly broken and not using the right extensions, the right build options or whatever, and then it gives a terrible image of your software. Well, desktops have the same problem, but multiplied by all the default apps and the entire desktop shell. So they do need to have some amount of control on how that software is distributed, and they need to have this answer to when people say, oh, your stuff is crap, it's all broken and it's crashy and it doesn't work. Well, you can say, it doesn't work because you're using it on a platform that builds it badly. But our version that we built, it works in that regard. Or they can say, oh yeah, you know what, you're right, this is completely broken and it's broken on our own version too. So we're gonna need to fix it and improve the processes. It is good all around. So yes, it does add another option for users that they have to look at, assess, try out, and pick or not pick. But in the end, I think it is good, if only to have that reference-based, unified development environment and solution for hardware manufacturers. Now, when it comes to KDE Linux, like I said, it is super pre-alpha. I tried like 5 different daily versions on 3 different computers and virtual machines, and I just couldn't get it to run properly until I sifted through all the logs and noticed that the digital clock applet was doing something wrong and removed it from the config file, rebooted, and then I could get a graphical shell. So it is not ready, not at all ready to be used by anyone unless you intend to be an active contributor to KDE Linux. Don't try it, don't install it, and don't go pester developers. They've been very clear on their website, it is not ready for public attention, which is why I changed the point of that video from, hey, let's take a look at the systems of KDE Linux, to let's talk about like official desktop distros instead, which meant I have to re-record and re-edit an entire video because the previous one was already ready. Anyway, this will conclude today's video, so I'll definitely take a look at KDE Linux once it's more ready for public attention. I'll do the same with GNOME OS once it's ready for daily use, and we'll talk about this topic more as time goes on, because I think it is a major thing happening in the Linux world, and it is super important, and I think we should absolutely encourage those efforts and support them if we can. Anyway, this will conclude today's episode. I'll finish on telling you about our sponsor, which does have their own Linux distro. It's Tuxedo Computers. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed. I talk about them in literally every single video. I just use their devices these days. Everything I use is made by Tuxedo. Like, I edit, record, and publish everything from one of their laptops running their distro, Tuxedo OS, using KDE actually. And I also game on one of their computers. It's a Tuxedo Cube, it's a desktop. I'm running Nobara on that to do all the gaming. I use it as a gaming console. They're fantastic, they have plenty of options. Go check them out, the link is in the description. You know about them by now, I've been talking about them for like 4 years now. So yeah, super regular sponsor of the channel, super great hardware, just go check them out. The link is down there. Anyway, this will conclude this video. As always, you know where all the YouTube buttons are and why you should click them. You know where we're going to keep this conversation going, in the comment section, obviously. Let me know what you think about those official desktop distros, what you think about them, the general concept, not the implementation, obviously. And I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!